Hello, BookTube. It is 98 degrees inside my house. It's a New England house, so we have a room upstairs that has air conditioning. We have a room upstairs that has a fan. Most years we believe that is overkill. This year it is not. But we have a wonderful tag. I was tagged by Steve Donahue. It's an original tag of his, and it's a good one. And I looked at my wife, Deb, and I says, I have got to do this. Yeah, well, end up being a little more difficult, thought-provoking. I'm not surprised by that, but I struggled a little bit with it. So I'm going to give it my best shot. So let's go. George Washington, the most overrated book you've ever read. Well, when I was a young fella, I was a big fan of I, Claudius. It was on PBS. I got into the books by Robert Graves. I got into everything else. I ended up getting into mythology, did an undergraduate degree in archaeology. And as much as I love Robert Graves, I'm going to have to go with this. It's meant for poets. It's probably a good source book of mythology for poets, but it fails on a number of levels, and I wouldn't discourage anybody from reading it. Maybe you'd like it, but for me it was not the thing. John Adams, the most argumentative book you've ever read. Another one from when I was younger, Civilization by Kenneth Clark. He is a great man. He is talking about art and civilization, as you can see, as a personal view. And he makes the argument. I remember, at the time, it was probably the first of the great documentaries, really was. You look in the history of documentary filmmaking. Came in for a lot of criticism, and with later generations that had different priorities. But as a personal view, which is what is tagged to be, I think it's a landmark in cultural discourse. I tend to agree with him on a great deal. Some things where we've gained information since he did that, of course, that's always the case whenever you're, having this kind of discussion. You may adjust your views due to that, but for the most part, I really admired what he did. So Samuel Adams, which one of my sons, that's his name, Samuel Adams. The most underrated book you've ever read. As a New Englander, as a person who lived about 4 houses away from Stephen King, as somebody who this area of the world has been my life, or at least a good portion of it, I would rate Salem's Lot by Stephen King, one novel in this collection, as the single best depiction of the types of towns, the types of towns where I grew up. I recognized everything. And it's not one of his novels that you hear a lot about. It's still my favorite novel, and some I like, some I dislike immensely. But to depict small town Maine, where I lived, obviously, when he wrote it, I don't think anybody's ever equaled it. So, we go there. I'm just going to refresh this page a little bit. Abigail Adams, a secondary character who probably could have handled things as well as the main characters. I'm not going to say probably. I'm going to say, as written, this secondary character would have been a better character, was way more interesting way more talented, and nowhere near as... she never irritated me where the main character did. That would be Hermione Granger. Why wasn't this novel, which is good, she's done more for reading and literature in the past couple decades than any book, why isn't she the main character? Just asking. Number 5, Thomas Jefferson, the most hypocritical book you've ever read. Well, I'm not going to get into the great details of why, and I'm not going to ask you to read it because it would be an imposition. But that's Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Confessions. Yuck. All right. Way worse than anything Jefferson ever did. Jefferson has his problems, but he also has his highlights. This guy's a mess. Number 6, Benjamin Franklin. The book by the oldest author you've read. I don't know. This was really tough. I saw a little news clip about they've discovered on a computer hard drive or something a notebook by Saramago, a writer, a Portuguese writer, Nobel Prize winner that I really admire. I've not read everything he's written, but I've read plenty. I wonder if he was. I don't know how old he was. He was alive. He was extant during my lifetime, so I would choose him. If anybody else out there knows, I would think that maybe him. Okay, number 7, Alexander Hamilton, the least charismatic but most important book you've ever read. He can't answer this easily. In this case, I don't know if it's fair to call it not charismatic. If you have a certain type of reading that you like to do, if you're a nonfiction reader, and even if you're a nonfiction reader, it may be a bit of a challenge. Not challenge because you wouldn't understand the material, but challenge because it may not fit your type of reading. I would go for The City in History by Lewis Mumford. Absolutely marvelous work. One of the greatest, I would put it in my top 20 books of all time easily, and when I did that, it would be at the top of the list, or near it. Wonderful, wonderful book. Came out a long time ago. Actually, I can check to tell you when it came out. Harcourt, Brace, and World Incorporated, New York. This is from 1961. So it and myself are the same age. And it and myself are a little less than charismatic, but we're both very important. So, John Hancock, the most charismatic but least important book you've ever read. Cormac McCarthy, The Road. And I've mentioned it on this channel before. This is a first edition, wonderful, wonderful thing. We got it right off. 2006. My dad read it, hated it. I have to second his opinion. Big time author with not much of a book in my opinion. Other people love it. Fine. You gotta go with their own opinion here. Paul Revere. A book that alerted you to something. This is a 2-part volume book. It's a book broken up into 2 parts. It's Karl R. Popper, The Open Society and Its Enemies. First part's Plato. Second part's Hegel and Marx. Absolutely brilliant. And it makes you understand just how horrific Plato is. Just what a rotten scoundrel and a non-modern. He is. Read it, and you will never look at Plato or Greek philosophy. You won't look at Socrates. None of them are very admirable. And Karl Popper, running from the Nazis, will make you understand why. I think he ended up in Australia. I'm not positive about that. And number 10, the smartest, boring book you've ever read. Those of you who've been watching my channel for a while know I am struggling mightily with Jacques Berlioz in the Romantic Century. It's brilliant. I am not. I literally want to fall off the couch when I'm reading it. Number one, because I don't understand everything. I have read Jacques Bresson, other volumes, and they're just fantastic. Because they're about things that I at least can get a grip on. And this is just so far over my head. I will finish it. If this channel lasts 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, you may see me do it. It'll be a celebration. But for now, no. So, thank you, Steve. This is a wonderful, wonderful tag. I'm just going to do a quick tag a few people real quick. Earnestly Eston, obviously, because I know he'll get a kick out of this. Runwright Reads, Biblio Atlas, Elena Makridina. Her and I are doing a buddy read. We've already had some people sign up to join us. Sign up. Just say they're going to join us. So look at her channel for that. Lord Dunson, anything we're doing. Dane Reads, Todd the Librarian. I mean, I think I don't even remember who Steve tagged. So, Josh at Literary Gladiators. This guy's put out some great tags lately, and I'd love to see what he could do with this. So, I think that's not too bad a list. Anybody else, obviously. So, thank you, Steve. It was a challenging tag. Thank you, BookTube.